The Return of Light. Revelations from the Creator God Horus.
Chapter 2, The Fall. Part 1, The Reality of the Darkness. According to Heru, and according to the memories of those of us who can remember back to the times before we entered this universe, the original creation was without stain, without suffering, without even disharmony. If all this is true, then why are we, in this part of creation, experiencing life in a way which bears only a small resemblance to that original state of perfection? And what is the condition of this universe as a whole? Are the problems which plague our planet the exception or the rule? I personally found that a part of my spiritual maturation was a series of shocks and disillusionments about the nature of things in our world and even beyond our planet. These have not been pleasant, but the willingness to come face to face with reality has been an essential aspect of growing up for me. Humans who are able to acknowledge the truth of existence on our planet have had to acknowledge the fact that all of our major institutions, government, medicine, finance, religion, etc., are riddled with corruption, and exist more for the purposes of power and control than for the service of humanity. As I expanded the horizons of my knowledge and experience, I found that Earth was not the only place where evil existed. I spent a number of years reading every available book on the extraterrestrial abduction phenomenon, and accessed my own memory of a frightening encounter with the Greys early in life. The Greys are a group of extraterrestrials who are reported to be responsible for the majority of the ET abductions. Some years later, I teamed with a psychic friend to do extensive work in an attempt to reclaim some of the dark fourth-dimensional reptilian races. In the course of this work, both through my own experiences and through further study and cross-referencing with others who had authentically experienced these realms, I was forced to realize that our galaxy is filled with war and strife. Peaceful planets exist, but only because they are protected in one way or another. Past life memories also surfaced of personal experiences with warring and destruction in other star systems and galaxies. An even greater shock occurred when I discovered that negativity is not confined to the lower dimensions. As I continued to explore and expand my horizons, I found that dark beings and energies exist even in higher dimensions. I remembered being attacked and almost destroyed as a being at a time when I lived on the sixth dimension. Heru and Sananda told us that pretty much all of the ruling councils in our universe, whether they be planetary, galactic, or even broader in spectrum, were compromised to some degree. We also discovered dark grids on the 4th, 6th, and 11th dimensions, which were covering large areas of our universe. When we asked Heru if darkness, negativity, was more prevalent in the lower dimensions, he replied, "No. It is as above, so below." It is comforting to think that Earth is a primitive schoolhouse or a brutal but effective boot camp, a tiny and troubled speck floating in the cosmic oceans of love and light. Heru states that this is not the case. If our universe were a place of peace, truth, and joy, he asked us rhetorically, would the situation on Earth have been allowed to persist, the injustice, the enslavement of so much of humanity, the prevalence of suffering? The truth, according to Heru and the other masters we have spoken with, is that we live in a fallen world which exists within a fallen universe. Part 2, The Fallen State. What does it mean to exist in a fallen state? In this section, I will briefly touch on some of the ways that this reality has impacted the existence of humans and all beings in our world and beyond. I do not mean in any way to say that our planet is entirely negative or that life here is only misery, for that is certainly not the case. Earth is renowned throughout our universe for its exceptional beauty and diversity, and even under great duress the human spirit can be indomitable. Every person who holds to some degree of truth, of love and of light, creates a small bit of heaven, and it is all of these together which make our world a place of great hope and unexpected miracles. With that preface, I will proceed. For humanity, the fallen state means that life is short and, in most cases, fraught with difficulty. The struggle for survival dominates the human experience, and a high proportion of humanity lives in grinding poverty, barely maintaining the necessities of life. Rather than spending our lives in the delight of creativity, in the joy of spiritual growth and unfoldment, most of our time and energy goes into obtaining food and shelter. Relationships bring love and connection but also deep disappointment and heartache, and many people are alone, abused, or emotionally adrift and lost. True fulfillment is rare and usually fleeting. The hearts of humanity are filled with sorrow, even those of us who are the most fortunate. We exist in a state of separation from God and from life itself. The fallen state of humanity means that our DNA has been decimated, to use Heru's word, and that we experience illness, aging, suffering, and death. The fallen state of our planet means that all of our institutions are corrupt, and that no matter how hard we try to change or replace them, corruption again ensues. The fallen state of our world means that we live behind massive, though unseen frequency fences or energetic barriers which keep the light of the Creator from us. It means that countries are unable to live in peace with one another, and that despite all the efforts of all the peacekeepers throughout history, we still fight and kill one another, and always the innocent suffer. It means that with each advance, there has been an equal or greater decline. For example, as technology has developed, it has freed us from the plow on the one hand and chained us to the computer on the other, and has also caused the poisoning and devastation of our beautiful planet. The fallen state of nature means that even in this least contaminated part of our reality, predation, parasitism, and competition are the rule. The strong devour the weak. Even in the plant kingdom, vines strangle trees and roses grow thorns for protection. The fallen state of our universe means that the very atomic structures, the building blocks of matter, have been so distorted that matter itself is corrupted. As Heru says, the very stones of earth cry out. Matter, instead of existing in a pure and perfect state, continually falls into entropy. We can still perceive something of the original divine order of things as we study the cosmos. Yet we see chaos even there, as galaxies collide and stars consume one another. Before we plunge into the details of the fall, I would like to offer some of Heru's words and ask you to hold them in your consciousness as you read the next section. I am so glad that I have even a few memories of life before the fall.
It is very helpful, even for those who do not have direct memory, to call upon their soul or their monad, higher self, to hold up for them that image of themselves in an unfallen state. When each of you sees your original template, and understands that you did not cause your fall, that you are not to blame for this fall, you will have taken a huge first step in reclaiming your divine nature. And when each one of you begins that path, the path of separating what is not you, what is the fallen, from who you truly are, it is a path of glory that I cannot put into words for you. There is so much wondrous joy that awaits you in this discovery. For each one of you, each and every individual on this planet, has descended from the very highest lineage. You were created by creator gods of the highest order, and as such royalty, the likes of which you cannot imagine, flows in your blood, in your bones, in your DNA. It is your heritage, it is your destiny, and it is time to reclaim this.
Part 3, The History of the Fall. Heru, if Prime Creator made and designed this creation to be one of joy, harmony, and perfection, what happened?
Approximately 1.3 billion years ago in your time, there was an invasion which occurred in a universe near this one, an invasion of darkness. What we will call darkness, for the purpose of these discussions, is a non-souled, non-living substance, antithetical in structure to the basic life inherent in every atom of creation. It is not known where it comes from, or who or what designed it. It has the tendency to permeate anything that it touches, though some beings have been able to resist it, at least in maintaining the purity of their spirit. The universes had never experienced conflict prior to this event, and therefore the membranes around them were only designed as containment of form and not as a protective barrier. I would liken this invasion to the effect of the bite of a poisonous spider or snake on the human body. The original universe which was affected then sickened, and essentially died in a very short period of time, almost immediately. Of the beings living in it, those who could do so fled into the neighboring universes, unknowingly bringing contamination with them. It was at that time that a small assemblage of beings was sent to help. This group was not the one to which the light workers on Earth belong. This was prior to that time. The structure of the one dead universe was collapsed and melted back into the all, with great sadness and solemn ceremony. Those who had escaped seemed at that point largely unscathed. But from that time forward, the surrounding universes began to experience some disharmony. And this began to grow and magnify, and spread rapidly, as there is much commerce between universes. This spread continued and did not seem overly alarming, just concerning. When this reached some several thousand universes, it was decided that a concerted effort would be made to deal with the situation. Therefore a large group of beings assembled, and that is most generally the group that the readers here belong to, the group which we call the light workers. They arrived, each of them with their specialty and their mission, and began to do their work. If you were to examine the state of those affected universes at that time, as compared to the present, they would look far more light and harmonious than your current universe does. It was as though everything was perhaps 1 degree off where it should be. It was small, it was subtle, it was not dramatic. There was not a great deal of suffering, there were no wars, there was just a level of disharmony, a small amount of disease, and a sense that everything was slightly off. Things were no longer perfect. Meanwhile, the insidious nature of this poison, or this darkness, was that it penetrated deeper into the infected beings and deeper into the systems in these universes. The worst part about this poison is that, unbeknownst to the host, it would usurp its free will in a very subtle way and begin to redirect its life. At this time there was a concentration of many of the great and mighty beings who were contaminated and infected by darkness, such as the creator gods, angels, archangels, and Elohim. It is the fall of these elevated beings which, in your mythology, later came to be known as the Lucifer Rebellion. Again, unbeknownst to these beings, their free will had been usurped and they were being guided into paths that would not normally have been their choice. The reason that there were many great and mighty who fell was twofold. One was that the infected creator gods and the angelic beings who were in that original universe were the ones who managed to escape. They were more mobile than a cat or a bird, for example, in terms of traversing great space and time. They then met with their equals to work on the problem, and their equals and counterparts then too became infected. Therefore, because of the nature of those who escaped the original universe and who dealt with the melting down of that universe, they unknowingly ended up contaminating a large number of very high-level beings. Each of these beings would have a job, so to speak. Wherever they were working, and whatever they were assigned to when they returned, would then also be corrupted. Therefore fallen creator gods would create fallen universes. These were much darker than your universe is currently and are not salvageable. They are not structured on the basic sacred geometric principles that your universe is structured on. There was also a point in time, just prior to the erection of the frequency fence, when these creator gods decided that they would create in their own way and in their own manner. In their delusion, they declared this a superior creation to that of Prime Creator.
Did the contamination then spread from the highest dimensions down?
Yes. As I stated earlier, when the original invaded universe died and was melted down, those highest beings out of that universe are the ones who escaped. Therefore this contamination happened from the highest orders, and actually spread downward through the dimensions. In the fallen universes, darkness exists downwards from the 11th dimension.
Part 4, The Fall of Our Own Universe. Heru states that about 6% of the universes in this creation are dark. About 2% are wholly dark, for they were created by the fallen creator gods. The other 4% were created light and were subsequently invaded. Our own universe, which was originally a place of symphonic loveliness, in Heru's words, is one of these. Heru, we would like to discuss the fall of the universe that we live in. First, how many universes are there, and what percent are dark or compromised?
The universes in this creation number in the tens of thousands. Darkness is only in the last outer layers of the universes. Perhaps less than 2% are wholly dark, and maybe an additional 4% are embattled.
Then let us look for a moment at the creation of this universe. We know that universes are made by creator gods such as yourself, and that in order to create the large universes they work in groups. Who created our universe? Several years ago we were told, by a source outside this universe, that its creator was called Godin. Who is Godin?
The spelling of this name is Godinj, and the J is almost silent. Godinj is actually not one person. It is the collective signature of the dozen or so creator gods who came together to do this. That signature, Godinj, is written in the atomic structure of all matter in the universe, and that is why it carries power.
We notice the similarity between this name and our word God.
Yes, and I believe if there were scholars who could get this name into the Hebrew alphabet, they would find some good information and make theories around it.
Please explain exactly what Godinj is.
Godinge is a group of creator gods who wove the membrane, creating the perimeters of this universe around the great plasma given to them by Prime Creator. They themselves form, in essence, the nucleus of that great cell, i.e., the universe. And spinning out from them are all of the forms of this universe, large to small.
Were you and Durga/Sekhmet part of the original collective of Godinge?
No, we were more in the role of advisors, and we chose the beings that make up Godinge.
Please describe the fall of our universe.
Your mythologies have many descriptions of the fall, the most famous in the West of course being Adam and Eve, and the apple and the snake. If we use this as a framework, we would say that the apple is the body of contamination and contaminated knowledge, the knowledge of duality. We would say that the snake was the carrier, the contaminated creator gods and angels and archangels. And Adam and Eve would represent the original blueprint of humanity as well as that of this creation and this universe. When this poison fruit was consumed, not only did the blueprint of humanity fall and become corrupted, but the life forms and worlds also fell. So both the Adamic and Edenic blueprints for this entire universe fell. There was, of course, resistance. The creator gods Godinge, those who are instrumental in creating and holding this universe in form, were divided. Some fell, and some were then imprisoned by the ones that fell, giving the fallen essentially free rein. There were some very, very destructive battles in this universe. An uneasy truce was then struck, with the dark dominating the light, but the light holding enough mass and power to prevent the entire universe from falling. Many compromises were made, not for the better, but for the purposes of stalling the dark until rescue could be effected. And that is pretty much where things have stood up until now.
Did the fall of our universe occur fairly early on in terms of the invasion, or relatively late in the game, so to speak?
Early on. It occurred about 900 million years ago, in your time.
What % dark is our universe at this time?
It is about 75% dark.
Going back to the information we originally received, we were told that Godinge made a terrible error in the creation of this universe, and that in the process he himself became split into two parts, one light and one dark. Is there any truth to this?
This is an interpretation of what happened. What occurred was that this universe was created close to perfect. It had some slightly flawed blueprints, which have occurred in the outer or newer universes, but everything was functioning relatively well here. When this attack happened, the dark forces used those flaws to create a tremendous fall and rending. When that occurred, it split the overlighting council of creator gods who created this universe, so there was a rending within that group. Two of these creator gods fell, and this again relates to what you call the Lucifer myth. And those who fell are the ones who have created the completely dark universes.
Please explain the slight flaws in the replication of blueprints in the universes, and how the dark used this.
The basic structures of all life, including DNA and atomic structures, were created essentially the same throughout this creation. In the process of creating more and more universes, the outer petals on the flower of creation contained a few minute distortions in DNA, and also in atomic structure. This happened as the replications of these basic structures and blueprints were repeated countless times. However, these minuscule flaws were not seen until the dark invaded. The dark then used this as an opening, and magnified and further distorted these imperfections. In the unfallen outer universes, this has not been much of a problem and is being corrected with ease.
Did this damage to the DNA only affect life forms on the lower dimensions?
No. DNA is a multidimensional structure which has its roots in the 12th dimension, and passes through all of the dimensions into the 3rd, and the structures of life are then built upon it. Therefore, truly each cell of your body is a gateway to the higher dimensions. When the creator gods, and other high beings fell, the DNA became damaged and distorted. The Godinge collective, for example, is the support for every cell of life in this particular universe. When it fell, every cell within this universe was affected. Therefore, the corruption begins at the top, and descends down into each cell of creation, distorting all throughout the entire process. And not only the cells are affected, but the same applies to the atomic structure. From the very top, the atomic structure was distorted. An effect of this distortion is the fact that in a fallen universe all matter is subject to entropy, changes through its infection. This is one of the laws of physics in your world. In an unfallen universe, this is not the case.
Part 5, The Fallen Experience. As we continue with information about the fall, I would like to remind our readers that this information is only being given out now because of the fact that rescue is at hand. As Heru stated in the introduction to this book, I want you to know that the only reason this dark truth is being allowed to come forward at this time is because of the certainty and the nearness of the dissolving of all that is dark. It is truly very close to us now, and even upon us. Later chapters will focus on the coming restoration and reclamation of Earth and our universe. I would like to understand the many ways the forces of darkness have distorted life here, and made certain things impossible, and other things of a destructive or unhappy nature the norm. Like children raised in highly dysfunctional or abusive families who have no idea that their experience is wrong and abnormal, even perhaps criminal, I think we on this planet have no idea of the extent of abnormality in our own life experience. How does all of this relate to the fall?
This is really a vast question, but let me first state that none of these conditions exist in an unfallen universe or world. There are as many pathways of disease and disharmony as there are illnesses of body, mind, and society. There are countless factors, and I could list them all. Let us start, however, with the fundamental premise that what society has defined as human nature, the aggressive desire for conquest, the desire for dominance, greed, selfishness, cruelty, all of these things are not normal, and are the result of the fall. Then when you look at how this so-called human nature has expressed itself in culture, in society, and in the institutions that govern this world, you have an idea of the complexity of what needs to be reformed in every system, and on every level. Be assured that all of this will change, and very rapidly, as the restoration of your planet and your universe proceed. And as humans are restored to their original nature, their hearts and minds will again express the divine blueprint and perfect harmony that was intended by Creator.
Are there some sectors of the population, such as political leaders, darker than others?
Yes. Those who are the most aggressive in acquiring and maintaining power and control over others are in general quite a bit darker, and are also oftentimes used as vehicles for some of the fallen beings to carry out their agendas.
What percentage of the human race at this time is not corrupted by some degree of darkness?
All humans are affected by darkness to some degree. Because it exists on the atomic level, there is really no way to escape it. However, we have noted that the souls of some beings have been able to resist this influence. More than half of the people on this planet, perhaps as high as 60% of the humans on this earth, are in a state where their soul, their spirit, their intention in life, is to manifest light. And that is truly a miracle. Things look so bad, and the negative structures are so strongly in place, yet the weakness in the plan of the dark is that they have not been able to corrupt the human spirit in so many.
I often think of the humble people of Earth, many of them very poor, many living in underprivileged countries, yet who maintain their purity of spirit and dedication to God.
Yes, and many of them are much happier than the privileged.
What percent dark is Earth at this time?
Despite the fact that over half of humanity still holds to the light, the darkness tends to be in control here, because of all the systems that are in place. Therefore I would have to say that Earth is, at this time, about 75 to 80% dark.
What, if any, is the difference in the personal experience of life between those infiltrated by darkness and those not?
Imagine, if you would, two tuning forks. One of them might be covered with whatever junk that would prevent it from sounding, but the tuning fork itself is still in perfect pitch. At any time that it is unwrapped and struck, it will resonate. Because of that, it holds at its core that true resonance, even though it is not sounding. Then imagine a second tuning fork, where the tines have been twisted and distorted. Whether it is wrapped or not wrapped, whether it is struck or unstruck, it always carries that distortion at its core. And that is not to say that this is uncorrectable.
Is life easier for those humans who are fallen, who are not resisting the dark?
That is perhaps too broad a question. In some cases, yes, in that they would receive a great deal of support in acting the nefarious schemes of the dark. You could say the wheels are greased, and their ambitions are oftentimes not thwarted, because they are in essence sons of the ruling body, whether that is literally or in spirit. But ease does not equate to happiness or harmony.
Is there a tremendous pain deep in the soul of all the fallen?
How could there not be?
Part 6, a creation without defenses. If this creation was made without any form of negativity, then was it unable to defend itself against darkness? Why did not the Creator act to drive darkness out of the creation?
This creation is a creation of love and light, of beauty, of vast amounts of diversity. And as I said earlier, it is an expression of something beyond words, that indescribable place which the Creator expressed from. In this expression there was no thought of destructive or negative forces. These were not even conceived of as being a possibility. Therefore this creation was created without weapons, without defenses. You will see in the universes which are not fallen, for example, that the whole concept of predation is much different. When this creation was attacked, although the Prime Creator was aware of it instantly, the Creator was not able to comprehend the danger, and was not able immediately to come up with a good solution. Therefore it spread. Really, the amount of time that darkness has been here is a very short one, in terms of the time of the Creator. To use an analogy, it is as if this creation were a human who was bitten by a brown recluse spider. The initial bite did not seem that bad, and nothing was done immediately. But as with a brown recluse spider, the toxin spread from cell to cell, bringing death, rot, and decay with it, until the flesh around the original bite began to die. It is at that point that the body would begin to marshal its defenses. However, as with the brown recluse spider, the natural defenses would perhaps not be enough. And in fact, as stated before, this creation had no defenses whatsoever. Therefore it has taken some planning and engineering in order to create weapons that were never before conceived of, to create defenses that were never before conceived of. For you see, the angels and creator gods, and all of the beings who are on the front line of this fight, have had to cobble together defenses, and weapons out of whatever they can pick up. They have been picking up their shovels, and broomsticks and trying to fight a highly sophisticated invader when they had no prior knowledge of defensive strategy. And that is why in many cases, it appears that the dark side wins the battles. But the shift is happening. The Creator has come up with a strategy. The weapons are in place, the armies of light have been created, and the tide has turned. And in a short swift time, the war will be won.
Still, why did help not come earlier? We're talking about an enormous stretch of time here. Is it not true that all the original beings in this universe have been crying out to the Creator for help, with their uncounted trillions of voices and for eons?
Yes, and it is being answered. I know it seems to humans, and to many life forms that this has taken such a long time to accomplish. And there is regret that there has been so much suffering, and that this has taken such a long time. I have outlined the reasons, but there is definitely regret that there has been this amount of suffering.